I'm 82 years old, and I suppose that at this point there's no real reason to pretend anymore. Time has trimmed away most of the pride, most of the stories I used to tell about myself. What's left now are the things I never said enough, the silences between who I was and who I tried to be. A few months ago, someone asked me a question, nothing dramatic really, just a quiet question from a young nurse who helps me with the mornings. She said, "What do you think it was all for?" It sat there between us like a stone dropped into deep water, and for a long time I didn't answer. I nodded, smiled the way old men do when they don't want to show they're caught off guard. But that question, what was it all for? It hasn't stopped echoing since. I used to think I'd have an answer ready when I got to this age, something neat and finished like the ending of a movie. But it turns out, life doesn't really end cleanly. It fades, and your memories start weighing differently, the small ones getting heavier, the big ones feeling lighter, almost imaginary. I didn't expect that. When I was in my 30s, I thought I understood the purpose. I worked steady hours at an insurance company, decent pay, a desk with my name on it, a wife who loved me though I didn't say it back enough, and two kids who grew up mostly around the sound of me typing. I thought I was doing what mattered, showing up, providing. My father had done the same, and his father before him. You work, you bring home a paycheck, you keep the lights on. That's how men measured life back then. Evenings were short, a quick dinner, a couple of polite questions about school, maybe half a television show before I fell asleep in the chair. Saturday became the day I caught up on things. The bills, the garage, the lawn. There was always something that needed doing before I could relax. And Sunday night, I'd start worrying about Monday again. I didn't think I was neglecting anyone. I just thought this was what being responsible looked like. There was a night when my daughter, maybe 7 or 8 then, came to show me a drawing she'd made. It was a lopsided house with 4 stick figures. Me, her mother, and her younger brother. She'd drawn me holding a briefcase. I remember that part clearly. I asked her, "Why the briefcase?" And she said, "Because you always have it when you're leaving." I laughed. She laughed too. But years later, when I started cleaning out old boxes, I found that same drawing folded up in a book. And now I can't look at it without feeling that little twist in my chest, because she was right. That was how she saw me, leaving. It's strange what gets remembered. Birthdays, holidays, they blur together. But the ordinary days linger. The sound of the coffee machine at 6 a.m., the light in the kitchen before anyone's awake, the quiet understanding that everyone in the house was living around each other more than with each other. We loved each other, of course. We said it sometimes. But mostly I loved them through actions, like paying the bills, changing the car's oil, like working extra hours so we could take a short vacation each summer. I don't think I ever realized they needed something else from me, something slower, gentler. The truth is, it never crossed my mind that time was doing what it always does, moving, even when I wasn't paying attention. When my wife got sick, I was 51. It wasn't sudden, not at first. There were small things, forgetfulness, fatigue, that we both brushed off. By the time we faced it, the doctors didn't have many kind words left. That was the first time I noticed how loud the house was when she wasn't herself anymore. The silence filled every corner. I still went to work. I still paid the bills. I told myself it was for stability, that she'd want me to keep things normal. I didn't see that what she wanted was me, not the schedule, not the plans. Just me sitting with her when the fear crept in at night. One evening near the end, she looked at me and said, "It's all right to stop trying so hard." I think she meant it kindly, but I didn't understand then what she meant. I kept trying to fix, to organize, to stay strong. That's how I'd lived my whole life. That's how I lost most of it too. After she passed, the house became very orderly, neat, predictable. When people say grief is chaos, they're wrong. For me, it was tidiness, folding the same towels, eating the same meals, keeping every room as though she might walk back in. It was the only way I could stand the quiet. I told myself I was okay because I wasn't crying. Truth is, I just never stopped working, even after I retired. I volunteered, picked up consulting jobs, and always kept something on my plate so I wouldn't have to look directly at the empty chair in the kitchen. People praised me for staying active. "You're keeping your mind sharp," they said. But I wasn't keeping anything sharp. I was hiding. Years went by that way. My daughter moved states away. My son, too. Visits turned into calls, then messages. They sent pictures of their kids, my grandkids, who grew up mostly as faces on screens. They always sounded busy, and I always said I understood. I did, because I had taught them that rhythm, that distance. I built it. Then came that question. What do you think it was all for? The nurse didn't mean to strike a nerve. I think she was just making conversation while pouring my tea. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. All these years I had built a life that looked right from the outside. Savings, a home, good reputation. I was dependable. That word was always meant as a compliment, but dependable is a kind of safe distance too. You become reliable because you keep feelings tucked away. You show up, you deliver, you don't falter, and before you know it, you've turned every bit of tenderness into efficiency. You can't measure the value of a life by how responsible you were. Trust me, I've tried. One afternoon, I asked my daughter that same question the nurse had asked me. She laughed softly and said, "I think it was for love, Dad. Just that." Then she looked away, almost shy, like she wasn't sure I'd agree. For a while I didn't. The word love always felt indulgent, something for poems or young people. But lately I've started to see it differently. It wasn't that I didn't love enough, it's that I didn't show it enough, in ways that could be felt, remembered, touched. I used to assume people knew, my wife, my children, even my friends. I thought love was obvious, like gravity, always there, invisible but constant. But love, unspoken, grows quiet in the corners. Eventually it stops answering back. The question changed me because it stripped everything bare. It made me look at my life not as a collection of years, but as a balance sheet of presence versus absence. And I think I came up short. Presence, the real kind, is when you let the moments interrupt you, when you stop mid-task to listen, when you say yes to the walk even though you're tired, when you open the door instead of nodding from across the room. I can count too many times I didn't. There was a moment, small, but it's the one that returns most often. My son was 16, asking if I'd help him with something in the garage. He was trying to fix an old motorbike and I said I would, but I had work to finish. I told him give me 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes stretched into never. The next day he'd worked it out himself. He was proud, said he didn't need my help after all. And I was proud too, until I realized what he'd really learned was that he couldn't rely on me for small things, just big ones. And it's the small ones that make someone feel safe. At this age, time doesn't move the same way. Days are long, but years collapse. I'll look out the window, and it feels like everything happened last week. The house, the kids, the job, the noise. Then I blink and it's all gone quiet again. I don't think the quiet is punishment. It's just the echo of all the times I thought there'd be more time. That's the cruelest trick of living. You never realize when you're in the last time. The last family dinner before someone moves away. The last phone call before illness. The last laugh shared before silence steps in. You always imagine another until there isn't. If anyone younger hears this, I don't have advice. Not really. Just an observation. Life isn't made of the big moments, but of the pauses in between. The ones you can so easily overlook. The drive home. The walks by the river. The offhand "I'll see you later" that you assume will always be true. Try not to rush past those. They're what hold the real story together. And if you're ever asked what it's all for, don't wait until you're old and alone to find your answer. Ask it now, while you still have people to hold when you don't know. Lately, I spend most evenings sitting by the window, watching the last light fade from the garden. There's a tree out there that my wife planted decades ago. I used to think it looked out of place. Now it's the only thing still growing strong. Sometimes when the wind moves through it, I think I can almost hear her voice, not words exactly, just that softness she carried. That's all I really wanted in the end. Not success, not recognition, just to be close enough to feel that softness again. So what was it all for? It was for the mornings when the coffee smelled like her perfume. It was for the weight of a sleepy child leaning on my shoulder. It was for every quiet evening where I could have said something kind, even if I didn't. It was for love, the kind that asks nothing, the kind that slips by if you're not paying attention. I learned it too late, but I learned it, and maybe that counts for something. If any of this meant something to you, just tell someone you love them today. Don't wait for the right time. The right time was probably yesterday. I'm 82 now. I don't expect to understand much more. But this I know. The question never really goes away. It just changes shape. What was it all for? I think it was for the chance to ask that question before the silence takes over.